Good afternoon, everyone. This is Mike Romali here with the Hurricane Outlook and discussion for September 23rd, 2022, around 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We have a lot to talk about today, including a big hurricane threat shaping up for portions of the Florida Peninsula over the next couple of days, and major Hurricane Fiona that is expected to bring massive impacts to portions of Atlantic Canada. So let's go and jump into everything. Taking a wild look across the tropical Atlantic this afternoon, we noticed that we have several systems on the board today. We have Tropical Depression 9 newly formed. We have Hurricane Fiona, Tropical Storm Gaston, and Tropical Depression 10. For the sake of today's video and time, we'll be talking about Fiona and TD9. Now, taking a look here at Tropical Depression 9 here today, we notice that the circulation has become a lot better defined and organized since last time we spoke yesterday. And in fact, it is very evident to see that we have a closed low-level circulation here, albeit weak. It is closed and is able to try to generate its own thunderstorm activity. Now, we notice these Milky Way cirrus clouds here. These are pushing from the north to the south. This is a result of Fiona's outflow, still impacting TD9 today. And this is likely to continue for the next while here, at least for the next about 48 hours. But we notice that all the thunderstorm activity is pushed off towards the south and west, and that could cause additional center reformations inside the deeper convection. We take a look here at the recon plane that was in there from earlier today. We notice that again, the pressures remain pretty high right now, 1,007 to 1,010 millibars. There was a little bit of 30 knot winds here, even some suggestions of maybe some 34 knot winds at times, but generally speaking, it is pretty light wind right now. However, there is clear westerly winds here. We notice that there is clear westerlies here, and then you've got the easterlies right here. So definitely we do have that cyclonic circulation today. Now, if we take a look here at the official track forecast from the Hurricane Center, this is expected to become a storm sometime later today or tomorrow. And now, this is really a battle between whether or not it gets Hermine, the name Hermine, or Ian. Either one would be designatable to the system. It depends what TD10 does, because that's also expected to become a storm later today as well. This is expected to remain weak for several days. We noticed that at least for about the next 24 to 36 hours, this remains pretty weak with only very slow intensification. But as this begins to approach Jamaica here, the kind of the longitude of Jamaica, this is beginning to move towards the northwest as it kind of rounds the subtropical ridge out here, and it begins to align itself in a very favorable upper level environment and calls for explosive intensification at this point. The Hurricane Center is now explicitly forecasting rapid intensification going from hurricane status or near hurricane status within 60 hours from now here sometime Sunday evening to Category 3 intensity on day 5 as this approaches the Florida Peninsula somewhere to the south of Tampa Bay, kind of very close to maybe Fort Myers region sometime early Wednesday morning. Now, the risk impact, at least for now, remains significant for portions of the Cayman Islands and portions of western Cuba. There is an elevated risk for portions of Jamaica given some of the heavy rainfall threat. And there's also a risk here for potential elevated impacts to portions of the northeastern tip of the Yucatan Peninsula and also the Bahamas as well. And this is really to account for some of the track uncertainty, because there is still a little bit of uncertainty. And the Florida risk impact is now beginning to increase with significant impacts expected there across portions of especially the Florida Keys and South Florida. We do have lower confidence in this so far, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. But the overall wind forecast, especially for portions of Cuba and the Cayman Islands at this point, we could see winds that get as high as 100 miles per hour, especially for portions of the western tip of Cuba at this point. Depending on where this exactly tracks, it's going to matter in terms of the exact track. Again, right now the Hurricane Center forecast calls for this to kind of go down the western tip here, but it could even be a little bit more to the left of that, or it could be a little bit to the right as well. Now, if we take a look here at what this storm is expected to do, how strong it's going to get, where it's going to go, let's look at the HWAR forecast. This is the 060 run valid for 5 p.m. this evening. We're looking at the upper level wind environment here, and the first thing that stands out right now is that, again, we still have a lot of this shear coming out of the north here. This is Fiona's outflow, but there's also an upper level high that's right here. And this is actually, I believe, created by some of the outflow from Fiona in the first place. So this creates this little bit of a ridge of high pressure here. You've got that northerly flow there, but you notice on the back side of that, you do have this upper level low that is also moving westward, and this is going to be breaking that down and also reducing the shear over top of TD9. And so we noticed that within a few days, we start to get the lightening of shear really by about Saturday. And then as we get into Sunday, again, we notice that the pressures still remain above, 1,000 millibars at this point. So we're not sub 1,000 above 5 a.m. Sunday, but that begins to change. We notice that the upper level environment becomes increasingly favorable for explosive development. All of this outflow production right now is helping, and you can see our storm is in a very favorable, very low shear environment at that time. And so the forecast here on the HWRF calls for explosive intensification going from only a tropical storm by 5 a.m. Sunday to, in this forecast, probably a major hurricane on Tuesday. So we're talking within about the better part of about 2 days, we're talking about a major hurricane that develops on the model as a result of the favorable trough interaction, but also the upper level environment becomes increasingly favorable. Now, again, the forecast track here matters because, like on the HWRF here, this doesn't go over Cuba. This actually kind of just grazes the western tip and moves into the Gulf of Mexico while moving towards the north and east. Again, and this matters because this allows for more intensification over water. And then this enters the Gulf of Mexico within a few days and begins to undergo several different interactions here. We notice at the end of the forecast period, here we do have a trough that is digging in across portions of the western U.S. And this trough is likely to induce a little bit of southerly shear over top of our system, but it is not likely to completely disrupt our storm and disrupt any significant intensification. If this is a little bit further south, kind of coming up maybe on a track like that towards Tampa Bay, this would still be a very, very significant system. Now, I doubt we're going to see rapid intensification all the way up until landfall, although it is certainly possible, but there will be enough shear to at least cause a little bit of doubt with that. Now, take a look here at the moisture field here for TD9. We notice that today, again, it's located in a pocket of some moisture, but the overall circulation center remains devoid because of that shear. But over the next few days, this begins to rapidly intensify. That moisture pocket comes together. And there's still a little bit of uncertainty in terms of where this final consolidation ends up happening. Any more center reformations could cause this to track a little bit further towards the west, maybe splitting the gap between the Yucatan and Cuba and rounding and turning towards the north and east. That is certainly a possibility, and that would put more of the Florida Big Bend region and portions of central Florida more at risk than a track that would mainly take this maybe over portions of southern Florida if it consolidates a little bit further north on the final track there. But either way, again, this is expected to become a major hurricane, and you notice that, again, as we're dealing, we've got this cold front moving into Florida, and what this is going to do is allow the storm to turn northward, but also this is expanding that moisture field significantly far to the east, and that's going to allow for some heavy rainfall, irregardless of where exactly the storm makes landfall. So the entire Florida peninsula is at risk for very significant rainfall, at least over 5 inches, which is being predicted at the moment. Now, if we look at the overall steering flow and evolution on the GFS, again, it's pretty similar to what we just talked about. We've got a high confidence trough that will be over portions of the northern U.S. that's carrying our storm off towards the north and east, or kind of north and west, and then eventually turning it northeast. Again, wherever this turn happens remains to be seen. But we can see the forecast tracks here from today have shifted mainly back towards the east. Again, yesterday we were dealing with a few members that tried to even sneak this as far west as the Yucatan Peninsula. However, that has certainly changed, and the current Hurricane Center forecast is actually on the far southern end of some of the guidance here today that tries to sneak it a little bit more towards the north before kind of curving it in. We notice here that, again, the GFS ensemble forecast here does call for most of Central Florida to be under the gun here. There is still some of the outlier tracks that carry it further westward towards portions of the central Gulf Coast. However, this is probably unlikely at this point. I think we're seeing a consolidation for Florida to be under the risk here. If we take a look here at the super ensemble blend, this is about 139 different ensemble forecast members. We notice, again, there's pretty high confidence, at least in the short term. And then there becomes some divergence here once we get up to about hour 72. There's still a lot of weaker members on the southwest here, on the southwestern side. though this is, again, becoming increasingly unlikely, and the mean is kind of somewhere in between here, south of Jamaica, currently where the Hurricane Center forecast is. Eventually, we get out here to about hour 102, so this is about the 27th of September, and we notice that, again, we have most of the members that still have this kind of centered over, that the mean is basically centered with the Hurricane Center forecast. But you notice, again, there's outliers further towards the west, and there's outliers that, again, further towards the east that do miss Florida. And that is certainly a possibility that maybe this only grazes the southeastern tip of Florida and is maybe more of a threat for the Bahamas. But the overwhelming consensus is that this will impact Florida. But we notice that there's still a very wide spread here within about 5 days. We'll go back to the 5-day forecast. There's a lot of spread here. Anywhere from the northeastern tip of the Yucatan all the way to the Bahamas at this point, there is that threat, but the ensemble mean is kind of somewhere right between where the Hurricane Center forecast is right now. So on this current track and trend from what we've seen today and over the past couple of hours, my plan here, I'm located in Orlando, so my plan is to leave Orlando probably sometime Tuesday afternoon or evening, and take I-4 down to 95 and then connect, or to 75, and probably take that down to near Venice or Port Charlotte, maybe as far south as Naples or Marco Island, depending on where exactly the landfall point looks to be. Of course, I'll be going with my team. We'll be doing kind of the normal routine. This will be live streamed. It's going to be the first live stream attempt that I'll be doing. It's going to be a little bit difficult. Don't have some of the equipment that we would like to have, so unfortunately we don't have that, but this will be live streamed, of course, videos and whatnot. So if you are interested, of course, you can always sign up for, crowdfunding. If you want to support the channel, you can hit the join channel button, the membership, join channel memberships. You could support me on Patreon. Those links are in the description down below. And of course, everything else is free though. And of course, I'll be continuing to update on Twitter and here on YouTube as well. So nothing's changing there. But those are my plans. And of course, these will change as the track and intensity gets refined. Now, looking real quickly here at Hurricane Fiona, we also have a storm that has now grazed portions of Bermuda today. Again, Bermuda saw some pretty significant impacts this morning with gusts that were approaching 100 miles per hour from what I've seen based on some reports. This is now rapidly scooted off towards the north and east. You can see it now phasing with this upper level low and a cold front. The cold front's actually located somewhere in here, so this is now knocking on the doorstep of becoming a post-tropical cyclone. However, we still notice that the storm is still ongoing, very intense, still an eye structure today. And this is very unlikely to change for the next several days. This is moving off towards kind of the north and will be bending back towards the north and west. The official forecast does have this remaining a major hurricane all the way up to near the landfall point somewhere to the east of Halifax at this point before coming post-tropical. Again, we do have hurricane warnings in effect for portions of Atlantic Canada, tropical storm warnings to the Maine border, and significant storm surge and wind impacts are expected for portions of Atlantic Canada. And if you want the full detailed list of impacts, you can refer to my video yesterday where I talked about exactly what impacts are expected. This is the 5 a.m. forecast. So again, this has now moved. The center position is somewhere right here. But again, this will be moving towards the north and west here before kind of curving due north. And significant impacts are expected for portions of Atlantic Canada over the next couple of days. So my thoughts and prayers are with everybody there. All right. So that being said, I do hope you have a great rest of your afternoon and evening. I'll be sure to do a video update later this evening on TD9 and Fiona, more than likely just focusing on TD9 though. But with that being said, I hope you have a great rest of your afternoon and evening. Of course, I'm Mike O'Malley. I'll be talking to you guys again some more later this afternoon.